welcome to the channel. My name is Ian and this channel is all about music and art, and I'm about to go off to Edinburgh Festival Fringe to review lots of shows with my wife Jane. And what I noticed was that quite a few of the shows that we saw in the 2021 Edinburgh Festival Fringe are now being reshown again this year. So what I thought we would do is we would just re-edit the original review that we did and update them with the current information, which we'll put at the end of the review, so that you can get the latest information as to where and when each show is happening at this year's Edinburgh Festival Fringe.
So the play, piece of theatre that we went to see was Sweet FA. Now this is set in a football stadium, and Jane's more of a football fan than I am. I know nothing about football, and I know even less about Scottish football. So for all you Scots out there who love football, I know nothing about football. Okay, I know about, there's a bit of a rivalry between Celtic and Rangers, but we'll leave that one alone. Anyway, this football ground was Tynecastle
Tynecastle Park.
Sorry, Tynecastle Park, which is the heart of Midlothian. And I had to say, I know
that means nothing.
It does mean. I'm thinking, is that the name of the football team? Apparently it is, because I've just checked. So apologies for all you football fans out there, but I am a Luddite as far as football. American football, I'm cool with that, but
right,
the real game, the real game,
right.
No chance.
This is what the description. Okay, 1916, women's football is fast becoming the most popular game in the land. One Edinburgh factory team fights for their right to play the beautiful game. From the producers of the 5-star sellout A War of Two Halves, audiences can expect a similar blend of history, humour, passion and poignancy, with even more live music and song, performed in the open air on a specially built stage within the main stand at Tynecastle Park. The play dramatises the little-known truth about what happened to the women's game.
Now, before we get on to the review, I have a question for Jane.
Oh no!
Right, when we arrived, did you really think they were going to play? They were going to perform it on the actual hollowed turf of the heart of Midlothian?
No, right. When you got into the stand, we were obviously, it was one particular section, and in front of us, built out from that part of the stand, was a very small stage. But then obviously behind that, you know, we had the backdrop of the rest of the stadium. Yes, of the stadium.
Yes.
Finishing my words for me, have you noticed?
For you.
And
it's
in
late.
front of each of the goal mouths was a sort of a set of lights which was illuminating the goals. And I thought, wow, you know, at some point they're going to actually be on the pitch, and
it's a game of two halves. Sorry.
And they're going to kick some balls into the, into the goal. At which point I thought, well, I want to be high enough in the stand so I can see. Well, obviously that didn't happen. It was for effect. It looked
nice.
It looked great.
Yeah.
But it did fool me. I thought at some point they might go onto the pitch, but they didn't.
Because you kept moving. The reason for this is we kept moving up and up and up in the stand, and I couldn't really see the point in that because we had a good view actually.
Anyway,
anybody going to see it will have a good view.
Enough. Yeah. You only needed to actually see the specially constructed stage.
Yeah, you did. You know, the fact that it's. I actually thought the setting.
The setting was brilliant.
Brilliant. It was, and as it got darker, that it really worked. The actual way it was staged. The only negative thing from the standpoint of view is the bloody seagulls. The bloody seagulls are really, really noisy. Now, there's obviously the production team can do nothing about the seagulls, but they are quite noisy, and people were looking around.
They were amazingly
noisy.
It was as though somebody was at the back hammering something.
Yeah.
And then because we were all looking up, trying to work out where the noise was coming from, and it is the birds, mostly
seagulls, yeah, because they're big birds.
On a sort of, well, it's not a glass roof.
It's a corrugated
sort of perspex
roof with there might be some metal in there as well, but it's a corrugated
anyway,
roof.
That's by the by.
But that's
because we are
distracting.
We are being distracted from.
Yeah. So, what did you think of it?
I thought it was very good. I thought the performances were fantastic. I liked...
It's an all-women cast.
Yeah, it's an all-women cast, so you have them... They take on various roles. And the main sort of alternative roles that they take on are the Scottish FA, which are obviously, at that point in time, all gentlemen.
Yeah.
But I'll come back to that. But yeah, I liked the way that they constructed the narrative, in the sense it was done with a bit of explanation from maybe one character, then they'd play a scene, there might be a song, but the song was always relevant to that piece.
It was,
it's not history.
It's not. You wouldn't call it a musical in the sense that it's got lots of songs. There's probably
I wouldn't.
There's like a theme song which they come. I thought that opening sequence with the girls coming on, and to the girl playing just guitar, wasn't she?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the sound quality was superb, and part of that I thought was the reverberation of the actual stadium, and that, I mean, it did sound quite spectacular. Did that opening sequence?
Yeah, it did.
It did. But you can't really call it a musical. There are some songs. The songs are in the, I guess, traditional folk, but they are very relevant to certain parts of the of the
and
play.
Also, it's, obviously, the main theme is about what happened to women's football.
Which is true.
And obviously we got some facts and figures and dates and things. But there's also interlaced, because obviously at that time women's suffrage was very prominent.
Was it 1918? So the First World War's on.
That's
so,
right.
Yeah,
so you've got the whole... So it's linked, obviously, because it's in 1916.
16 to 18.
You've got the women taking on the men's jobs, because so many men went to war that they needed women to fill the men's roles. And then, obviously, what happened when all the men came back, because that's relevant to the story of the football, plus their jobs. So that's all interwoven into the story, but obviously the main story is the football.
Yeah, there's a subplot of a relationship between two characters, which I thought was fine. I have one gripe.
Yes,
with it.
well, I wonder.
I wonder if it's going to be the same gripe. Yeah. I thought it was really, really good. I thought the performances were great. The sound quality was great, apart from the pigeons, but they couldn't do anything about that. And I loved the narrative. I loved the story. I loved the women's story. Let's say that first of all. And I quite liked the relationship story, the subplot relationship. And I particularly liked those two characters, which was Daisy and Alice. And they were almost like the lead characters, but obviously everybody was taking different roles. And I love the live music. There was one of the characters, one of the girls played violin sometimes when needed, and there was a girl playing just guitar, very simple guitar. Really, really loved all that. My only real gripe is when, and the way that the story flowed when it was the women's story, for me was perfect. But when they were playing the caricatures of the Scottish FA men, for me, that was... I mean, at the beginning I'm thinking one of the characters was Uriah Heep, ever so humble, and then it turned into Blackadder. Because it was... The caricatures for me were just too over the top. and that actually detracted from the whole piece for me. And I wasn't disappointed in the whole thing because I thought the whole thing was really good, but that element of it for me was disappointing. And every time they came out as the main character, I thought, oh, here we go again.
Well,
They've got top hats on. And it's so over the top. I don't know. I mean, you tell me what you thought.
Well, interestingly, I wrote.
I'm going to get into it.
In the interval, I wrote a couple of notes because there was so much going on. I just wanted to sort of think, right, what did I think about certain parts? And what I've written about the Scottish FA, i.e., when they played those male roles, I've written stereotypical but effective, because during the first half it wasn't quite so overblown,
you're right there. You're right,
and they'd only been there maybe one, possibly two seasons. I can't remember correctly, but certainly I felt it was quite an effective because we were laughing at them because they were pompous. They were toffs. They were
just topped,
and I felt it was done at quite a level that it was actually effective, because we saw them for who they were. But in the second half, there were some quite long scenes.
Yeah.
And actually, your analogy with the Blackadder.
I think the Uriah Heep was definitely was one of the characters.
Well,
in the first half.
I didn't recognise that personally,
but it was certainly in the second half.
But it was so overblown that I thought, I almost wanted, because what they were saying and doing was so awful.
Yeah, it was to women. Yeah.
You know, you really wanted to underline that, but it tipped, the balance of it being an effective device tipped for me, and I, like Ian, just thought,
And I'm sure some people, people were going away saying that they loved it, and and
I thought it was
and it's a very, very, very good piece of work. We've said before in our reviews, who's to say we're right, and we haven't spoke about it. We got a bus back. It's a good walk actually. If you're going to go from say centre of Edinburgh,
it took us half an hour
to walk. And actually, it's a slight digress. But what we thought would be nice was to leave Grassmarket, walk the go halfway, 15 minutes, stop and have a meal, and then finish it off. And we couldn't find a restaurant, but there's a cinema complex there with a load of really good restaurants.
In Fountain Bridge.
So if you are walking, it's quite a nice thing to do. Anyway, back to what we were saying. Every time in the second, you're right about the second half. And the first long scene in the second half with the male characters was almost too much for me, and my heart did really sink at that point. And then we got back into the narrative with the women. It was the women's story, but and I'm thinking, I'm okay now. We're back where I want to be, and I don't know any other.
I agree.
And it almost, I don't know if it's meant to be. I don't know whether it is written by a man, but it almost seems like a feminist piece, and it seems a bit male bashing of those characters because they are so over the top that
I didn't feel that. I just think that
I was on the women's side the whole time, and I wanted more of them and less of those male characters because they weren't real where the women's characters were real for me.
Yes.
I think that's what I mean, actually.
Yeah. I would have liked, having said what I said about the first half, I then wanted it to be very toned down when there was a scene with them, because you had usually an opposing voice pointing out, what they did, and that's all you really needed, because we'd seen how corrupt they were, and we saw the decisions that they made. Which effectively stopped the women's football happening,
for 50 years, I think they said in the,
yeah,
in the actual
yeah,
play.
yeah.
You know, and that, which was
the decision they made.
And we're seeing
yeah.
how women's football now is, it's on the TV, and it's, you know, it's where it should be. It's not, maybe it probably isn't where it should be. You know, here am I talking as a man who knows absolutely nothing about football. You know,
but the fact is that the FA banned grounds from letting women play football. It was not repealed for 50 years, as Ian said. 1971.
Which is criminal. It is criminal. It's a ridiculous situation.
So the story is a really important one that should be told, and that it's being told, and that's fantastic.
And the setting is brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean,
performances. But it's. Yeah.
I mean, I have to say, at the end, I was very moved by that final scene.
Yeah.
Because it rounded up what happens to the ladies, you know, and I was quite moved by that, you know. So I was on board, and it's 2 hours. You know, for an Edinburgh show, you know, normally they're an hour, sometimes an hour and a half. I didn't feel bored at all.
No, not at all. There's a short 15-minute
break in the middle.
And
like I said, the only hassle was those particular characters. But that's
just our opinion. Something else that I wrote that I thought, because it was quite obviously physically, it's an extension. That's the stage. It's not big.
No, it's not.
But I thought the way that they choreographed their movements, because they did a football practice, they did football games, all in that space.
Yeah.
And other sort of quite physical movements. But I thought that was all portrayed
and
really,
the factory
really,
well.
really well, because you know, instead of sort of running about, obviously, and playing a football match, the way they did it was often through just verbal sort of movements, saying, oh, so-and-so's going up that side, and the way that they watched and their movements. But it was really, really good.
Yeah, it was.
I liked the way they used the space. Yeah.
So, the scores on the doors, or the stars on the doors. How many stars are you going to give it, Jane?
I think it's an important piece of work.
I do too.
Of theatre. So I'm going to go for 4.
I'm glad you did that. I'm glad Jane's gone for 4, because I, in my heart of hearts, was always going for 3. And because I was sat there, and when that...
I don't think it deserves 3. I think it deserves 4.
Well, knowing the way that we do this, that the highest score always wins, I was really hoping you were going to say that. I'd have had a real dilemma if Jane had just said 3, because I agree with you. I think it deserves more than 3. Really, for me, it would be a 3.5 stars. We don't do half stars, but it's a 4-star. It's a 4-star review in that respect. Yeah. You know, and I wouldn't go so far as to say the piece is flawed, because some people will look at that and they'll get the lampooning of the Scottish FA, and they'll think it's brilliant. Maybe you need to be Scottish to be able to get that the Blackadder-ness of, and it really was.
I mean, just for us, it was just maybe used too much.
Really. But there's a bar. So if you're not that we don't drink, but actually that was actually quite a nice thing. So you could go and get a drink beforehand when you get there. You could take your drinks in with you. They were converted into plastic cups. This is a normal sort of thing. I think that was in football stadiums. And then at half time, you could go and get another drink if you wanted to. So which was quite, and it stayed open slightly afterwards as well. They told us, you know. But no, it's a really good piece of work. Yeah, 4 stars for us. It's definitely worth seeing. It's a really important story to tell, you know. Yeah, and tell us in the comments down below what you think about it if you do go and see it, because, you know, like I say, we've said a million times, we're not always right.
So Sweet FA is at the Tynecastle Park, which is the football stadium, and it's on every day from the 3rd to the 11th of August, and then it has a break and it starts again on the 19th to the 23rd. You need to check when the times are, because there are 2 times depending on which day. So for some of the shows it's at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, other times it's 7:45 in the evening. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next video. Cheers now, bye bye.